Now, welcome back to the People's Mirror. So, just from the previous episode that we have done, we also intended to recap what came out of the Kabarak meeting that was attended by former President, the fourth President of the Republic of Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and Gideon Moi, and the recollection of the earlier days of President, of course, Uhuru Kenyatta, that was being done by Gideon Moi. So, in this episode, we will put much focus on that before we start on something else. But later on also we want to talk about briefly the Ndindi Nyoro approach to politics that has been a public lecture for investment and business that is really impactful to the country, to investors, and even to young people who look into wealth growing, and is a very interesting approach that is devoid of politics like most approaches that have been taken by politicians. We'll be highlighting Ndindi Nyoro and some of the statements that he has said recently that of course are very important, while we'll also be asking the youth to take time and watch Ndindi Nyoro's videos. Then we will take a look at Gachagua will sacrifice you. Muthama has now taken a second approach to Kalonzo's attack. Last week we recapped an episode here, the People's Mirror, on how Muthama was taking it very hard on Kalonzo and Rigathi Gachagua, including the United Opposition camp, for actually being a tribal home. Now he has talked about very scary statements, including the fact that Rigathi Gachagua intends to sacrifice Kalonzo Musyoka, who is the party leader for the Wiper Patriotic Front. We'll put that before the mirror, and then we will finish with Wetangula'S statements on his brother's burial. Wetangula, whose name was mentioned a number of times in the Jirongo saga, and who we detailed here, the People's Mirror, as someone that suffered tremendously in a period of 1 week, losing two people that he had the last conversations with. I've also since made public statements yesterday on his brother's burial. So we will bring for you all those stories briefly before the mirror. But of course, again, if it's your first time interacting with the mirror, welcome. Now, you see, we are just about 170 subscribers shy of 2,000. And if you hit the subscribe button, perhaps we'll hit 2,000 before the week even ends. And also, you could make this your political commentatorship platform, where we bring to you what happens in the Kenyan political scene as it unfolds. It's also okay if you share, you like, and you comment. Now, let's start with this main story, or rather the story that we left pending from the previous story. Uhuru Kenyatta did not say much. He only blinked, or rather linked humor and leadership. But most importantly, he talked about the aspect of opening up opportunities for the young graduates who are actually graduating from Kabarak. So we will put just a few look, or like a limited look rather, into the statements that he made. But first, it's important to say that they were both sharing this particular platform with Gideon Moi, and both, of course, Uhuru Kenyatta and Gideon Moi are sons of former presidents of the Republic of Kenya. Uhuru Kenyatta's father, of course, was the first president of Kenya, and so he grew up as the son of the president. And Gideon Moi's father was the second president of Kenya, and he also grew up as the son of the president. So Uhuru Kenyatta has since become president after his father, but Gideon Moi has not. And people are saying that perhaps the current arrangement that he has gotten into with President William Ruto ahead of 2032 is to secure for him a slot as the president's son becoming president in 2032. Others have also downplayed that particular analogy, saying that Ruto's allies like Murkomen and Kindiki might also be interested in this seat in 2032 and might have the full endorsement of President William Ruto compared to, of course, Honorable Gideon. But conversations are underway, and between now and 2032 is an election away. So there is much focus in 2027 than it will be in 2032 to decide the fate of Gideon Moi becoming the president of the Republic or not. But that having been said, yesterday he was welcoming President Ruto Yesterday, he was welcoming President Uhuru Kenyatta to this function that was happening in Kabarak University. And he was just saying how the Kabarak University is actually embedded on religion and the doctrines of God, and how now moving forward, they want to conserve the entire aspect of energy from this particular electric energy that we use to the natural energy, tapping into sun and solar energy expansively. So Gideon Moi also used that platform pardon me, to properly introduce the fourth president of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, saying that he went to, of course, St. Mary's School and he was playing rugby. He was a winger in those early days. Now, this recollection of Uhuru's previous lives and also by this chairperson of KANU was a show of friendship, and they tried as much as possible in the brief moments that they spoke to deviate from politics and just make it entirely a statement of wishing the graduates well ahead of their lives into, of course, the employment and the real world space. When Uhuru Kenyatta took that particular platform, he also did not say much. He just said that he appreciates the university for taking that approach, and he wished the graduates well moving into their lives now post-campus. Now, Ndindi Nyoro. Ndindi Nyoro is an economist who has also gathered very good accolades in the recent past. We have seen him graduate from the University of Nairobi recently with a master's, and shortly after, as recent as last week, he was also graduating with another master's degree from Kenyatta University. But that aside, he's a politician that was ousted from the Committee of Budgeting in Parliament. He was actually the chair of that committee, the Budgetary Committee, Budgetary Allocations Committee of Parliament, that has since been taken over by a broad-based affiliate, Sam Atandi, the member of parliament for Ugenya constituency in Siaya. And so from that angle alone, even before getting into politics, it just looks at how competence plays games with our public institutions. An individual that is fit enough as Ndindi and who is keeping on bagging this particular papers to just keep showing his competence and his know-how in this area of economics gets ousted from a senior position like that and gets replaced by just another accountant, but who does not have these other qualifications. I really am yet to be fully aware what is the background of Atandi, whether it's law or economics. But then whether it's law or economics or whatever the background Honorable Atandi has, he does not have these accolades, of course, that Mr. Ndindi Nyoro has been receiving lately. And so competence-wise, Ndindi Nyoro would have sat there if it's not politics. But that aside, Ndindi Nyoro has also served in that particular docket, and Mr. Honorable Sam Atandi is also fit to serve in that particular docket. He meets the required standards to serve in that particular docket. Now, what we wanted to put before the mirror is really the approach that Ndindi Nyoro has taken when it comes to his politics. He has made sure that his politics now is not based on the a traditional way of doing politics where you attack the other camp or you sell an existent ideology of your camp, but he's taking it to real figures where most of the videos or public appearances that Ndindi Nyoro is making right now is in areas where he's trying to educate the normal Kenyan, the normal investing Kenyan on how to properly invest, number one, but number two, also to expose the way that our government expenditure and our government borrowing is not consequential when it comes to the overall outplay of our economics now and into the future. And there was this particular explanation that he was making that there is particular amount of money and allocation that was done that ought to have given each county, to each constituency, 12 billion Kenyan shillings. And he was just trying to explain how 12 billion Kenyan shillings would have brought a lot of development in certain areas of the constituency, but we can't see because of the graft schemes that are going on in the country right now. So I would really urge a young person that does not understand much of how the government works and also does not understand much on how investment works to take time and actually look at these particular interviews. This is not a paid promotion or anything, but it's something that's actually very impactful for the lives of the young people, not from a political point of view, but from an economic point of view, to take a look at Ndindi Nyoro's talks on economics and on finance and on investments, where now he says that whereas most people go to the traditional investments, including buying of land, he now talks about stocks and shares being the place for growth. Now, his politics was the basis of our putting into the mirror that it has kind of shifted from the traditional system of doing politics where you sell ideologies, but it has gone into a space of politicking where you actually make the voter more aware, you make the voter more empowered in their own personal space to actually make right financial decisions within the Kenyan political and economic space. The People's Mirror having put that before the mirror, let us shift to Muthama and his attack on Kalonzo. So sometimes back we put these statements of Muthama before the mirror, and Muthama was saying that he'd die with anyone who would put Kenya first when it came to rescuing Kenya in 2027. But he also categorically said that he would not be with anyone in whatever camp if that particular camp seemed to champion tribalism. Now, with his subsequent statements, it is very clear that Muthama's statements are being made from a particular standpoint of preference. They're not being made from a person who is sitting in the fence and hoping to see who is tribalist or not, but they're being made from the camp of the UDA party aimed at the United Opposition. Because now in his recent statement, Muthama said categorically that Honorable Rigathi Gachagua entered President William Ruto's camp only to ouster President William Ruto. And so when his attempts to remove President William Ruto failed, it is Mutuse who actually removed him out. And the statements that Honorable Muthama used is that Mutuse alimpiga teke. So it shows how Rigathi's attempt to remove President William Ruto from inside did not only make Ruto bitter, but ended up and made even the surrounding MPs around President William Ruto bitter enough to oust him, fitting perfectly on the very descriptions that President William Ruto himself has given on what transpired out of their relationship with Rigathi Gachagua. Now, Mr. Muthama says, moving into 2027, Rigathi Gachagua still have this bitterness and he intends to remove President Ruto from power. But this, he believes, will not be possible in 2027. So Honorable Muthama, who believes this will not be possible in 2027, has said that even the approach that is being used by Honorable Rigathi Gachagua to ouster President William Ruto is itself not a good one. He says that currently the former deputy president is scheming to use Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka as a sacrifice in the 2027 major polls. The reason for this, he says, is this. He says that Honorable Rigathi Gachagua will support Kalonzo Musyoka as the ideal presidential candidate up to 2027. Then when it gets to 2027, the camp that will be rallying beyond Honorable Kalonzo, as per Muthama, will not win. And so President Ruto will win the elections. And after that, he says now, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua will use that as an excuse to explain, and rather to say that he supported Kalonzo to the ballot, but they did not win because Kalonzo did not win. And so he will use that to actually call for support from the Kamba Nation in 2032. Now, blueprints to support these statements by Muthama could be traced could be traced from the Indire North concluded by-election, where after the by-election went the way they did, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua categorically said that the DCP party did not front a candidate in Indire North. It was the DP party that fronted a candidate in Indire North, and so the loss was as much as the DP parties as it was the United Oppositions, but in no way was it the DCP party loss. Now, this particular interpretation of the Indire North results have given people like Muthama confidence to say that if the 2027 elections goes contrary to the United Opposition's ideals, and if this happens when the presidential candidate for the United Opposition is not Rigathi Gachagua, then the first bullet that Gachagua will pull after that will be the bullet that he was not in the ballot himself, and that is why Kasongo was not defeated if that becomes the outcome in 2027. And so he will use that to cleanse himself post the election, but he will now use the support that he will have pledged for that particular presidential candidate to actually rally support for himself in 2032. Now, this is what Muthama is calling a sacrifice that is going to leave Kalonzo's neck on the guillotine. But Kalonzo himself has also said that currently he can confidently say that they had a conversation with Uhuru Kenyatta sometimes back, and Uhuru Kenyatta told him that the only problem that he has is that he's too trusting. And so he said that he thanks Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, and moving forward he's trying to trust people less. And so in trusting people less, perhaps he's taking into consideration this particular talks coming from the ODM party, including the ODM senator for Homa Bay, who sometimes back told Kalonzo to watch his circle, to all these other individuals, including now the statements by Muthama, who make it seem like a sacrifice in 2027 if the circle remains as it is. So of course, Muthama, who distanced himself from tribal politics sometimes back, actually made a lot of tribal statements in tribal language while attacking Kalonzo in this particular statement. And he blatantly now says that this particular plan to sacrifice Kalonzo in 2027 is the only lifeline of regardless politics in 2032. This heightens the conversation we have been having here, ladies and gentlemen. And you remember here, the People's Mirror, we have been having this conversation for quite some time. We have been saying that there is a systematic move from the side of the government to actually discredit the united opposition. And this systematic move is coming as a result of the fact that sources now say that attempts to woo certain key people to join the UDA part have failed. And so the person that has been in the eve of attacks lately for the past 2 weeks has of course been Kalonzo Musyoka. Now it is very clear that the attacks are not only coming from the United Democratic Alliance leadership, including the president. It has now been staged to be very systematic to come out of Kalonzo's own backyard by individuals like Muthama. Ladies and gentlemen, 2027 politics is not going to be very easy. The approach that is being used to discredit the people that can rise to power to challenge the current status quo is so strong. It is on the backyard, it is on the family, it is on the region. It is so systematic that by the time 2027 is reaching, it will have only very few resilient soldiers still standing up, with a lot of people having succumbed to the pressure of division that is very evident right now. But that is the nature of politics. If that is the attack that is coming your way, you just brace yourself for the attack or for the defense. And so we are keeping these attacks very, very, magnified in front of our mirror, so that you see how this systematic approach and this systematic hits from one individual to the other is really, really detrimental to the spirit of democracy now, 2027 and moving forward. Now, that story aside and the attack by Muthama to Kalonzo, let us close this episode with the last story being Wetangula. Honorable Wetangula, we detailed here in one of our episodes that he might have been one of the men that might have had a very terrible week. A terrible week in the sense that in one Monday he was leaving Kampala through the entourage of the Speaker of Uganda, and when he got to Malava, he went straight to his brother's home. He spent a night having conversation with his brother, then he went to Nairobi. The following day, his brother, at that very night actually, received a call that his brother had died. Then that very Friday, he was having conversations with Jirongo up to 9:30. Then Jirongo dies in a very mysterious way that the government is explaining to be an accident and is even providing evidence to the effect. But the Kenyan people are just refusing to believe, with others believing that the distance and the corroboration and the accident and the missing of 65 passengers and things like that really do not make sense. But believe you me, in the next 4 to 5 days, Kenyans people will have forgotten. Perhaps Jirongo would have been buried and a new scandal will have come up. Of course, a week ago, we were talking about Ikolomani and other things about the week before that. And even the week before that, Mbere North was the major conversation. We have since forgotten about Seth Panyako and things like that. And so this is the nature of Kenyan politics. So Wetangula made statement yesterday on his brother's burial, and he asked for the death of his brother to actually be turning over a new leaf in the relationship that existed or did not exist locally in his home and locally in Bungoma. And this is very important considering the fact that Tim Wanyonyi is also this Wetangula'S brother, and Tim Wanyonyi and Wetangula politically do not see eye to eye. So when Wetangula asked for the death of his brother to actually be peace moving forward, it could be interpreted to be within family and beyond. So he echoed the statements by Shikuku saying that when you meet a brother in a fight, you fall the opponent first and then you ask your brother for the cause of their fight later. So angusha yeye kwanza, sababu uliza baadaye, Wetangula says in the burial of his brother. So he did not say much, even if Gachagua consistently kept asking for more. He celebrated development that Ruto was geared towards this region, saying that among other things, there is now roads, SGR, that will be passing through Bungoma and an airstrip that will be constructed to ease transport for the Luya people to Nairobi. So he has asked Kenyans that amesema sahi that mtu wa Bungoma asiseme amenyimwa SGR. That was a very entertaining one. So he said he will not meet his brother again. And he explains how his brother, at one time when he was going to university, gave him a radio. And when it got very difficult in the university after he has read and his head was blowing, he used to play that radio. So that is one special memory he has of his brother, of the radio that he was given when he was going to university. Lawyers will never beat these allegations, man. Then further he said that he felt like his brother had called him by explaining the last details of his conversation with his brother, saying that the way that particular sequence occurred of him leaving Kampala, then going to Malava and making sure that he sees his brother before traveling to Nairobi, was itself a confirmation that his mulamua, that is the wife to the brother, now the widow to the brother, can confirm that seemed like the brother was calling him. So that has been an interesting recap. Of course, right now that we are heading towards Christmas, the Kenyan political scene is spontaneous. It occurs as it dims. But at the People's Mirror Daily, we will keep you updated at the snippets that occurs in the Kenyan political scene as they occur. Keep it the People's Mirror. If this is your first time, please hit the subscribe button. If you like what we are doing here, please share and ask other people to join this bandwagon that is the People's Mirror. Until our next episode.